Hey everybody, I am so excited to be here today, and with me is the wonderful one and only Asao Inoue, who is a professor and the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, Equity, and Inclusion in the College of Integrative Sciences and Arts at Arizona State University. His research focuses on anti-racist and social justice theory and practices in writing assessments. He is the 2019 chair of the Conference on College Composition and Communication and has been a past member of the 4Cs Executive Committee. He's also the executive board of the Council of Writing Program Administrators. Among his many wonderful and amazing articles and chapters on writing assessment, race, and racism, his article Theorizing Failure in U.S. Writing Assessments in Research in the Teaching of English won the 2014 CWPA Outstanding Scholarship Award. His co-edited collection, Race and Writing Assessment, 2012, won the 2014 NCTE 4Cs Outstanding Book Award for an edited collection. His book, Antiracist Writing Assessment Ecologies, Teaching and Assessing for Socially Just Future, 2015, won the 2017 NCTE 4Cs Outstanding Book Award. He also has published and co-edited collection, Writing Assessment, Social Justice and the Advancements of Opportunity in 2018, and a book, Labor-Based Grading Contracts, Building Equity and Inclusion in the Compassionate Writing Classroom. Well, I don't need to tell you all out there watching that we are so thrilled to have Asao joining us today. Welcome, Asao. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
It is so wonderful to see you. We go way back, right? You know, and
Yeah.
I'll never forget the first time I met you, right, at Fresno State, sitting across that conference table.
Yeah.
What was that? That
was a composition pedagogy class, I think.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I learned so much from you that quarter.
Yeah, we had a great time and had even more fun since together at 4Cs and other places. So it's been great watching you.
Celebrations at home and holiday celebrations, and graduations and pubs and paint nights and all kinds of fun things.
That's right. That's right. That is right.
Every time I see that picture, that moon painting that we all did, I think of our...
Yeah, we have both of ours hung up in our bedroom. So whenever we get up in the morning, we can see it and remember the good times that we had.
I love that. That is so cool, and it's such a great thing. And I'll tell you, you transformed the way that I thought about my existing mindfulness meditation practices when you started doing them in our graduate classroom. And that was so mind-blowing to me because I had been doing mindfulness and been doing meditation, Reiki, all these things. And I was grappling and struggling with how I was going to bring my academic and my and my contemplative careers together. And in that one classroom, you were able to answer that question for me. So when did you start using mindfulness, and what made you start using it in the classroom?
I throughout my life, look back, I've almost always, since I was probably about 10, 11, or 12, had some kind of contemplative or mindfulness practice. It may not have always been meditation, but it would have been, when I was younger and into my teen years, it would have been Kung Fu. I studied Kung Fu and a few other martial arts all the way into to my senior year of high school. And I did that mostly because one, I thought I wanted to be something else, and I was a very small kid, and I got into a lot of fights, and I had a lot of anger and a lot of this for a lot of different reasons. And I really didn't know it, but I was fortunate enough, attracted to art form, that really isn't about violence and is more about understanding and being embodied and knowing your body and paying attention to how you move and how you breathe and sitting down and perhaps meditating or just breathing. Oftentimes, I can remember many times where we would sit and do what I recognize now as a meditation practice in the dojo. But that's not what my sifu or my sensei, who, depending on the dojo I was at, called it. They just said, we're going to sit down and close our eyes, and we're going to think about a spot. And I just want you to focus on that spot. It's going to be black, and maybe it's a white spot, or white and a black spot. Just focus on that spot and breathe. And I remember doing this for maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes in every session, and or something like that. And it was a very relaxing and calming. And then within a year of starting those practices, my anger and my fighting in school vanished. Like I didn't find myself needing to fight everybody who disagreed with me or whom I thought was making fun of me, and it was a lot of the time that this happened. So, and I know that a big portion of that was my own reaction, my own responses to what was going on, because I couldn't control hardly anything in my life, right? One, I'm a child, I'm a kid, and two, I happen to be a kid of color who was in a very unfair system. For me and for folks around me, and it was building up and building up. By the time I was 12, I could barely stay in my skin, So I recognized those things in the past, and I sort of always kept the most important parts of those as I moved through school and into college, and then afterwards. And then it wasn't really until I was probably in my my late 20s, early 30s, when I consciously said, I need to meditate every day. I need to do that practice. And it was really a silent practice for me in the sense that I didn't tell people about it. I didn't make it a point to say anything. I just did it because I knew that it was helping me. And part of it was also, so before I went back to get my PhD, I was a tech writer at Hewlett Packard, and I worked for NASA and Mitsubishi Silicon, and I did all these technical writing. And doing that technical writing for like 12, 14 hours a day, for like 4 days a week, 5 days a week, I got repetitive stress problems with both my hands. So I had to go through lots of physical therapy. And part of that physical therapy was understanding that you do things, this intellectual activity, in a body that has limitations. And even though you're not working, say, at your computer or your desk, even when you're out gardening or when you're in the gym working out or when you're doing something else at home, those things matter also. Like, you need to be aware of what you're doing all the time, whether it's slouching in your chair or you're sitting up straight or walking. And those things, that also was a kind of I had to be mindful of those things. And going back to school and being in my chair a lot, right? Doing a lot of work, I needed to be mindful of this. And this was a way for me to do that, so I've always had practices in my life out of necessity, mostly because of the harm I was doing to myself. First, it was just my behaviors, right, and my reactions to my environments. Next, it was my work environments, right. That is, they were creating these environments in which I was doing a lot of work on a keyboard in a static position a lot, and my body can't handle that, and I needed to be aware of it, because it's easy not to be, because you just get the job done and then deal with the pain later, and that's no good. Nobody can do that. So I've had a lot of them throughout my life, and it wasn't until around the time that we met that I started to. Now, I will say I have the benefit of being in a field, composition studies, that is a mindful field. Typically, that is, most folks, to do things, asking students to do things like reflections and portfolios and journaling and things like that, reading in particular ways. Though all these things are versions, I think, of contemplative and mindful activities. So it was really second nature. One could say one's the egg and one's the chicken, but really they really work in concert in my life, because I've always been a reader and writer in my life. Even back when I was a child, I did lots of it every day. And but it was that moment when I realized, why shouldn't I be this practice, this contemplative set of practices has benefited me so much in my life. And it's mostly been quiet. Like that is, I've mostly not told anybody because I didn't know what they would think of me. I didn't, and maybe it was a moment in the US when these things were more willing to be folks to be, to speak about it and say, oh, that's beneficial. And the science was catching up, or what have you. But anyway, that was close to around the time that I said, it makes no sense for me not to do this. Like, it makes more sense to ask my students to sit quietly and let's do some mindful breathing for a few minutes. Let's ask ourselves to pause in our labors and listen to our bodies and recognize that we do writing and reading in bodies, and those bodies matter to the reading and writing and the learning, and that we can, if we pay attention to those things, we can learn a lot about our learning. And that's very powerful, especially in the literacy classroom. It can be very, very powerful.
Well, was the class that I was in then, was that maybe one of the first classes you ever implemented it in a classroom? Or
I don't know. It was certainly one of the first ones. It wasn't, I don't know if it was the first one, but it was pretty close. It was pretty close. So that was probably almost 10 years ago. Yeah. But I know that was probably because it was so effective in that class and everyone sort of really liked it, that I just said, I'm all in. I'm going to do it as much as I can. I'm going to do, because it makes such a big difference. And so since then, I've been very consciously thinking about how to make my pedagogies more mindful, more compassionate, because all those things always equate to better learning and learning that students and even myself value more, because it's more fun. It's more fun. It's more enjoyable. It's more all of it, So, and I don't see, there's no reason why learning has to be painful and hurt us. The whole thing, like, pain is, no pain, no gain. But that only works if you define pain in a very particular way. Like, I don't want to define it as simply being hurt. And I'm not saying that things can't be uncomfortable, right? But it can also be fun. And, so I think about the activities in my life that I do that I struggled through, right? That I got the most rewards for, I struggled through. I wouldn't think of the struggle as being all like hurtful pain. I would think of it as being a focused engagement that was difficult, but was productive for me and meaningful to me. And I wouldn't trade any of it. I wouldn't want to trade any of that climb to have an easier way through it, with the labor.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? And that for what I've seen in my classrooms, and this has been a new quarter, implementing mindfulness spaces in the virtual world is a very new thing. In fact, I'm going to write about it. Don't tell anybody. I'm writing about it. But I'm getting some really great feedback from students. And when we were in the classroom together, I really found that, and I continue to find that utilizing this space, this breath, this moment to be still within the classroom, I found that it really supports equity in the classroom. Mm-hmm. This presence, we all are doing this thing together and taking this moment. Have you found, that's, equity and all those things are so important in our education system right now, and how we acknowledge this and how we allow these inclusive practices. Are you finding that mindfulness, this was not on my script, but mindfulness helps and contemplative practices has helped you with that?
Yeah, I think it has. It certainly has from the beginning supported it. It's never hurt it, for sure.
Right.
Because we're all human, and we all respond to paying attention to ourselves and honoring ourselves and saying, I'm here in this moment, and I only get this moment to do this thing, and then it's gone, and then I don't get that moment back. And it can be a virtue and a blessing and a meaningful thing, or it can be ignored, right? And we can not pay attention to those things. And if the more things I think that we can pay attention to, the better off we will be. So I think yes, but I think maybe also part of that, I'm glad you mentioned like how might this like help, or how does it like foster equity? Because I think it does. I think it really does. And this would be really great research for someone to do, especially within classrooms and educational systems, like as you suggest, because I think at the root of much of, not all, because we're talking about systems and structures that are also inequitable, that me solo or even my own class cannot address fully. We can point to it, we can identify it, but that doesn't mean we're solving a problem, right? But it's important to do those things. But beyond that, if we within a certain place, it's difficult to not treat this space like all those other spaces that are inequitable, that are harsh to us, so if you're coming into a space that's meant to be, that's trying to be designed to be equitable, it can still have challenges because it can look at face like every other space like that, like the classroom. So having mindfulness practices also is a way to tangibly honor everybody exactly where they're at. And that is fundamentally an equity of practice. It says you are just as valuable as anybody else. You are valuable on your own merits, in your own way, and you don't need anything else added to you. You're not deficient in any way. And so now we start from that place. And now where do you want to grow from there? Right? And we all have this growth to do, say in a writing classroom or a literacy classroom. So, and part of that starts with, and as I know you know, Emily, it starts with taking stock of yourself, right? Saying, what am I doing right now? Who am I? How am I feeling at this moment? Am I prepared to be in this class at this moment and do the learning that's expected of me? If I'm not, I should be aware of that and either embrace it or accept it, or think about ways to be more ready for it. And I'm okay with some students, coming into the classroom, and when we do our mindful breathing and we take stock of ourselves and we try to prepare, and they're just not able to it on that day. I can't always be 100% able to do the things that was planned on every day. But if I notice a pattern, if I notice that it is a consistent thing that I am not prepared and not able to be prepared, I think there's other things that might be going on in my life that I should probably address, and not just reacting to the thing here. So one of the mindful practices that I really have found increased advantages and usefulness in my classrooms is, and I know we talked about this a little bit in the past, and maybe I don't know if I asked you all to do that way back then, but are the labor logs in my classes where we pause for 20 seconds on every session of labor outside of class, and we just log in some little bits of information about that session of labor. And so all I'm asking my students to do is pay attention to how you do the labor of the class, and in very particular ways. And then we get to reflect upon it. And that allows us to see broader pictures in a more nuanced way, right? So we can say, oh, I've not felt good on Fridays or Mondays or after 4 o'clock, or I don't really particularly like the readings ever in this class, or whatever they might find. But that's, good, brave stuff to pay attention to and reflect on and figure out how can I make this information meaningful to me and my learning. And I think that those are the things, the kind of mindful practices I want us to do. I also want my students to, so I usually will do this separately, like in little units. I know root beer is barking now. I want them to find ways to be grateful for what they have. If you are in college, no matter what college you're at in the United States, you have some things to be grateful for. Even if you are struggling to stay in that college, even if you have food insecurities and housing insecurities, and even those are there. If we pan out globally, you are still in a group, and it may not fit because the struggles are real and the pain is real, and the want and the needs are real, and they can be threatening. But there are a lot of people on this planet who have even less than you, who struggle even more. And I'm not saying that that's minimizing, students their pain and their concerns. Absolutely not. But it is to say we all have something to be grateful for, and be able is a tiny step towards finding some satisfaction and well-being in your life, and not getting overly whelmed by all of the pinpricks during the day that we get. And so and it can make the journey a little bit easier. It doesn't make it easy. It just makes it a little bit easier, like some better soles on your shoes to walk on. So
that's good. No,
yeah.
and I love that what you're saying, because we all, that gratitude, I've had students in the last few breaths that we take, just go ahead and think of one thing, right? And that you could be thankful for today. And even if you spilled your coffee all over yourself and you got a flat tire on the way to work, or, whatever the thing is, and to smile when you take a breath, and it's so fun, because I sit there and I'm not going to lie, I kind of do this. I kind of look over.
See,
we're all
who's doing that?
and it's so awesome.
I often will thank my students many times throughout the semester for being willing, patient, and brave with me to do the practice. Because I know when you're 19, 20, 21, you're still figuring yourself out, and you don't want to look foolish around all your peers. And this can feel like, for some students, a foolish thing, right? Even smiling for no reason can feel, to us oldies, anytime I can smile. Yeah, anytime I get to it, I will smile, because it's worth it and it makes me feel good. But I realized that I didn't always feel that way, right? When I was younger and less mature. So yeah.
It's kind of a fun thing. And I'm finding that having to wear a mask in public is really hard for me, because I like to smile at people. And I'm like, so I've actually thought about drawing a big smile.
Well, you've seen, I don't know if you've seen this. I saw recently an article that said there was a deaf woman who made masks, because if you're deaf, you can't, you're hearing impaired, you cannot see. If you're trying to read lips, you can't read. So she made a mask that had like a plexi, that's like a soft plastic that's see-through, where you can see the person's mouth. And I thought, what a great idea. Because we get so many cues from people's mouths, right? Not just smiles, but also, talking and things like that. So I think that it's totally worth, especially in these times when we may be wearing masks for a bit, for a while.
Yeah. I know. Well, and it's kind of one of those crazy things, right? You don't, I didn't realize how much I relied on my smiles at people, and I'm like, oh man, I'm kind of looking at them and they probably think I'm really
You have pretty expressive eyes, though, so I think the eyes help a lot. Yeah.
I am curious about, I'm looking at my little list here.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to sit down with, what you kind of are for a moment, all the faculty and staff at Green River College, and other places that have subscribed to the website, and give them a few reasons why mindfulness or contemplative practices can help us manage our own lives. So let's take it apart from the classroom for a minute and just say, for us as academic professionals, can you hear the geese? So the geese are
can.
Yeah, they're coming back. It's really cool. But what would be some reasons that you would say help us in our field?
You mean if we're, say, don't have a consistent practice in our lives?
If we don't have a consistent practice, why does it help, especially academic professionals?
I think that the academic life, whether you're an administrator or a faculty member, it's a really oftentimes thankless and difficult job, in the sense that there's a lot asked of us. We're often not paid nearly our value. And we care a lot about the people we work with, like students and our colleagues. And those things take emotional and psychological drains on us. And so we can often, I know so many colleagues from all different kinds of disciplines, from high up administrators to adjunct or contingent faculty members, who really, really care about their jobs, and they love what they do. but it drains the heck out of them. And that drain, when it happens over a decade or 3 or 4 or 5 years, depending on who you are and what you're doing in your life, and especially if you're not being compensated well enough, and there's way too many folks who aren't being compensated well enough, then you really need ways to be able to love yourself, and be able to. And part of loving yourself is paying attention to yourself and saying, I don't feel good right now, or I feel sad today, and that's okay. I'm okay with feeling sad because that's an emotion that I have, but I should recognize when I'm leaving that space and moving into some other emotional space, and also just being able to, like, giving yourself permission to not do work, to not have to grade those papers, to not have to just get ready for next semester, or to do that committee work, or to prepare for whatever, and to just be in this moment, because we none of us know when the next moment is going to be or is going to end, and none of us know when we're going to not have a next moment, and so this one's pretty precious. I mean, sometimes I will remind my own students and even my faculty. Because now, as associate dean, I can make everyone do mindful breathing, and so I do. And I don't really make them. I offer it to them, and we start every yeah. Yeah, I don't do that, but I do offer it, and usually they will take me up on it and say, okay, and we do a few minutes of it in each, like in a leadership meeting or in a committee meeting or something. But it's a draining job, and we need to find ways to build ourselves back up and to recognize, like, how hard we work. And I can't think of a better way than to stop for a few minutes each day, or in the moment of something, even for a few seconds, and pay attention to those things. I mean, that's, to me, very valuable. Very valuable.
Kind of breaking that system that we have. And I think in academia, I'm sure it exists in other worlds, but I know what academia is like, so I'm going to speak to that. I know that this busyness is so prevalent. This, well, I haven't slept for 5 days because I'm grading papers, kind of medal of honor that we wear, right? Instead of, I don't work on Saturday and Sunday. I spend my time with my family, and I'm enjoying and being participant in my life.
Yeah.
I know sometimes we have to, make concessions, but maybe, I don't know, one of the ways I try to think about it is to trying to unravel the becoming unbusy is, that mindfulness for, kind of shifts it, right? And makes it so I that presence of that moment, instead of being a human doing, I'm a human being, right?
Well, I think you're striking on something that I think is really, really important, that often can be hidden from us. That is that we often, especially in the U.S., value this really, really busy life. That means we're important. That means we're doing something good. That means we're being productive. And I don't want to, poo-poo any of that. Except that is a busy life. Of course, that's wonderful that we should be busy and productive and meaningful in our communities. At the same time, as I think you're suggesting, like, being unbusy for a bit can help us fill up those moments, right? That weekend, or that day, or that afternoon, and say, it's so full. Like, my afternoon is very full. All I did was walk with my dog, and I need, like, as a human being, I need it to be able to do this really busy stuff before. But, I have one practice that I've offered to colleagues and my students. No one has really been able to take me up on it very, very easily. And it is, so I usually make a practice of not having this around me, the cell phone. So what I do is, I just say, here's a great mindful practice that you can just try. It's also a little test, and it will make you mindful. What you do is you take that cell phone and you turn it off and you put it away in a drawer for a full day. And then take note of how many times you go for it. How many times you have the urge to turn it on, to check your Twitter, to look at your Instagram, to check your email, to look at your text message, or to try to reach out to somebody, and then just try to keep a loose track of how many times that was necessary. And how many times was there just the urge to do it, right? I have found in my life that it's 90, 95, 97% is unnecessary. It is. So I don't even, so now it may be easier for me because I have chosen a long time ago not to be terribly engaged on my phone. So when I do any kind of social media, it is at a particular time in the day, and then I'm pretty much done. Like 90% of my social media stuff is done, unless somebody is trying to engage with me, like they have a question for me or they are professionally reaching out to me. Otherwise, I have made a conscious choice to say I'm not going to fragment my attention. I do not perform well when I'm thinking, when half of my brain or a little part of it is thinking about that phone or looking for it. And so I won't engage that way. Like, that's just my limitation. And it turns out that it gives me deeper focus and deeper attention to the things I can pay attention to, whether I'm in email or in a classroom or walking with colleagues to a meeting or in a meeting. I don't have my phone. I just don't. And I'm able to be highly productive. And nobody has ever said, we can't get a hold of you, Asao. No one's ever said that. So I think there's a lot of falseness around our need for our things like our cell phone. I'm not saying cell phones aren't necessary. They absolutely are. But we probably don't need them quite as much. They are designed to grab our attention. Everything is in that device is designed to grab our attention, and that fragments us and ironically keeps us from being very mindful in our day, I think, because our brain is flirting from talking about this with someone and then going to the phone and then going to the phone and then looking at it and to me, I found it's just way too much for me. It's like when I watch someone do this, and since I'm aware of it so much, I see it in lots of people. It is like, I'm thinking, I can imagine in their brain, it is so difficult to be fully present. You can't enjoy this conversation we're having because every 2 minutes you're checking your phone. I don't know how you can. I know how brains work. I know how those things work. And it is not possible. It takes. There was a study at UW in Seattle several years ago. Might have been almost 10 years ago, but probably more like 8. In which a professor who does mindfulness practice in his classrooms asked the students to do he did a little study with the students, and he asked them to pay attention to and log in a particular way. I might have had a program to do this, their email and then their work. So when they're working on, say, a paper in the class and they had the email open, they would, you get the ding and then you check your email and then you go back just like that. So what they, yeah, perfect timing. So he found in his class with his students was that the average time it took for the student to re-engage and be back into the writing of their work from being just for like a couple of seconds, like 10 seconds, then they go back, it took like 15 or 20 seconds. So multiply that 15 or 20 seconds by all the little interruptions that you get throughout the day. And it's like, an hour of interruption or something. It was quite significant. And the productivity that is just getting warmed back up to this mental activity here, is also some time that is required. So I think it's really, and I wonder how, and I don't know this, but I wonder how accustomed many people are in today's world are to being deeply focused into an activity, being fully present and deeply focused into it, where time and things around you almost disappear. You're just in this activity. I know many athletes can do it that are at the highest level. It's like they're in that flow, right? It's like they can just do it. I remember when I was in high school I was a tennis player in high school and into college, and that was I can remember being in that flow, like in tennis, and the serves were working, volleys were working, everything was working, and it didn't last very long. But when you're in there and your muscles are responding and your body is responding exactly the way you want, and that's when everything fades away. You don't notice anything but you, the other person, and the ball, and that's it. And I feel like that we don't have a lot of that anymore, I think. Now, again, I don't know for sure. I'm just, hypothesizing here. But things like the cell phone, things like the way in which we fragment our attention often does that. Things that if we don't have mindfulness practices, we don't have a practice of trying to be in this one moment. right? So I don't know how, if you're not practicing that, I don't know how you would be doing it otherwise, you know? And this is not, I don't mean to sound like an old curmudgeon, that like, the, you know, the youngsters these days, I don't think I think they do a lot of great things that I think I would have trouble doing. And I know I would have trouble doing, but this one thing, you know, I'm so keen to it. I notice it. I used to think, oh, I just have a longer attention span. This was back in 2000. I remember saying this. I remember somebody coming to me saying, this was at Washington State University. I was a PhD student there at the time. And now a very good friend of mine, he was interviewing for a job. He was giving his job talk there. He was doing his thing. We were all in this big room listening to his job talk. I was in there. His name is Bob Eddy, wonderful guy. And he's still there at WSU. He was the director of composition for a while. He got the job. And he said, a year or two afterwards, when he was in the job, he said, you know, Sal, I remember you in my job talk. And I'm like, you do? Why would you remember me in your job talk? There was like 80 people in that room. Why would you remember me? And he said, well, you were the only one that I remembered that never unfocused from me. You were, every time I looked at you, you were deeply focused on what I was saying. And I really appreciated that. I felt like you were listening to me. And I thought, and that made me pay attention to, oh, well, is not everybody walking through life like this? but apparently no, they weren't, at least not there. And so I've been keen to it since. And I think it has a lot to do with as we started with I've had a lifetime of different kinds of mindfulness practices that have allowed me to deeply focus on things, for a lot of different reasons. But now I'm trying to just do it just to do it, if that makes sense.
What is do you apply it when you're doing your writing? And in the writing that you do, how do you?
Yeah,
I want to hear about
yeah.
that.
I think I do. I've always had I don't know if you know, I've always had a daily writing practice, which is why I was able to produce so much in a relatively short amount of time. So I write for about 90 minutes a day, sometimes 2 hours at the most, but usually I don't have that kind of time. So it'll be 60 to 90 minutes at least. And so I get up extra early. This is one of the first things I do after I've done meditating, after I've worked out. So I get up really early. So it helped. In Arizona, the sun comes up pretty early most of the year. So this is not a problem to get up at like 4:30 in the morning. So I'll get up early and I'll usually 90 minutes of writing every day. So I'm always working on something. But what I have found that's another way of me being in the flow of an activity and being fully present. Because I've done it for so many years, every day, I can move quickly, like within seconds, right into the writing activity. And I'm fully engaged in it. And next thing you know, oh my gosh, I've got a 10 o'clock appointment. I need to cut this off and get to my thing. So it is, so just to give you an example of how much I can do this, I started a book in August, a new book in August, part literacy narrative, part argument about white language supremacy in language standards. But I'm using myself as sort of a touchstone and example of my own literacy journey in school. And I finished the book and sent it to a publisher already. So I started that in August. That was, so not only was I started a new job as associate dean, just a month before, and I had to I was learning all those things and doing all that. And I thought, I'm just going to start. And I don't know when I'll get done with this. I don't know when it'll be done. I sent it off. This was really meant for a popular audience, not an academic audience. So I was trying to translate some of my other work to a popular audience and make it engage with a popular audience, because I feel like that's the next place to go. Well, I sent it to an agent and she liked what she saw. And she said, oh, well, you've probably been working on this for years. And I said, no, I started this in August. This is just the first chance I felt like I could give a full draft to somebody. And she said, well, it'll have to be about half the size. So it was too long. So producing, so I think that's one of the benefits I have had from being able to quickly be focus deeply, and be fully present. Is that if I'm fully present, I have much more at my command in terms of languaging and doing work with words, which is what we do. So that's helped me a lot. But again, it's the daily practice. I really do see my writing, a lot of my writing, as a contemplative act. It's an extension of the meditation that I do. I don't think that's for everybody. I just happen to be I'm a child of words. I was born with words, and I've always had them, and I always want them, and I love them, and I like manipulating them. And so they're important to me and how I understand my world. So that's, therefore they become a meditative act for me.
And that so speaks to me. And, you and I speak the same language with that, I think. And we've had that in common since the beginning, since we first met, I think. It's that presence of the work that we do, and the thoughtfulness and the being there for it, and I think that's, I look and I took a run through the woods this morning, and like I do most mornings, and I will stop for a moment and just appreciate a tree, and just that tree right now in this moment. I could go back tomorrow and someone may have cut it down, but that tree right now. And I think that tree is kind of a symbol of everything, right? In a way that if you're writing and my teaching and my time with my animals and my family, everything that we do, right, is this moment that will never happen, that impermanence, right?
Yeah.
That we journey through. And
and you think about like all the things, all the wonderful and happy accidents that required for that tree to be there, for you to appreciate it right then, right? And whether it's gone, like you said, like whether it's gone tomorrow or not, it's pretty astounding and miraculous that it's there, for all kinds of reasons. Some folks can attribute it to, a higher being, a God or something like that, or some could just attribute to the way in which the cosmos has put together this thing and created these happy sets of accidents or whatever, or a combination of both. But regardless, it's pretty doggone amazing to see that tree right there.
And I love that tree. And there's a lot of them, but I just, do you have any closing this has just been gold and wonderful and such a precious gift of you spending this time with me. And I always enjoy our conversations. And
me too.
And of course, talking about this is so great. The mindfulness aspect is great too.
Yeah, no, I think, it's wonderful to speak with you and to see you again, Emily. I'm so happy with how you're flourishing there and all the things you're doing there. I think if I were mindfulness practices and contemplative practices, they're pretty broad. There's a lot of things that go into those things, and they're not all simply sitting on a mat or in a chair, closing your eyes and, counting breaths. Although that can be a very meaningful practice, but there's a ton of other the gratitude practices I find so important, especially for younger people. I know I, as a young person, could have done with more gratitude. Because with gratitude, I think comes some sense of being humble in the presence of other people and other things. And when you're young, it's so easy not to be, because you're young and you just don't have enough time on the earth and enough people who have died around you or things that have come and gone to realize how precious everything is and how beautiful and wonderful and tragic and awful everything is. And that that all we can do is stand in awe of most of it. And that maybe we might, participate in some of those things, and that can be good and bad too. But certainly we should be humbled in the presence of all that we have. And part of that is being grateful, So for me, the gratitude practices, finding ways to be reflectively having gratitude in reflection is a really, really important thing, because, this last summer, my stepdad, he died of cancer. My mom and him were married for 35 years, 38 years, something like that. So, it wasn't a surprise. He was a lifelong smoker. I mean, like literally from like 13, maybe younger. And he died of cancer. And I think he probably knew the last 2 years that he was probably had something, but he just never went and got it checked. By the time they did, which was in the last spring, the doctors were like, yeah, we're pretty metastasized. This is, stage 4. And then with it by, I think by August, I think August or September, he was gone. And so that quickness in some of those cases can be an occasion to be quite mindful about, like, we have this guy in front of us who's pretty valuable, and now he's not, and he won't be here. Everyone won't be here. Not everybody will be here tomorrow. So I'm glad that most of us in our family had a chance to be mindful about how precious he was and how wonderful he was for all of us, and all the things that he on a daily basis did for everybody. He was a very kind man, even though he grew up in very difficult circumstances. But he was a very kind man and thoughtful. So, that having that, if you can't have that if you don't have a practice of being mindful of all the other things in your life, and then all you get to do is be regretful about that stuff. So I don't want to be regretful if I can help it.
No, not at all. Gratitude.
Yeah.
What a wonderful thing to leave us with is that thought of having gratitude. And what a perfect, I think gratitude encompasses all things mindful. And oh man, and speaking of gratitude, I am just so thankful and grateful for you, that you're a wonderful friend, mentor, teacher, and just awesome human that I have to do. And
Yeah.
I just really appreciate you. Thank you so much for spending some time with me this afternoon, Asao. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for asking me. It was a pleasure to talk with you. I'm so glad to see you. And they're very, very lucky to have you there doing the work you do. Yeah, so I'm happy that you found a good home.